Hey, this is Dr. Takima Dorsey with another wonderful season kickoff of leadership in the urban market. As an entrepreneur, as a mom, as a leader, as a civic engagement, as an individual, as a scholar, and always trying to bring solutions to areas of problems, there is always new and exciting things to learn each and every day. But just to wake up each day is a blessing in itself. Recently, you may remember that I have published 65 books within a 60-day time frame, and I'm super excited about it. The number one, or the focus, or the foundation, I should say, of why these books came to light is really about breaking the cycle of poverty. And one of my new books, called Breaking the Cycle of Poverty Through Innate Skill Set Development, for me is extremely important, because what we found from COVID-19 is that the unemployment line wasn't biased to anyone, whether you had a degree or you had no degree, and including those with doctoral degrees. So skill set development is an extremely important topic, and not just topic, but development of it. One of my skill sets happened to be the gift to gab, which is advocacy through interviewing and things like that. So hence why leadership in the urban market exists. Being on the air since 2010, almost 12 years now, I've had the pleasure to interview individuals across the globe, gone syndicated, prime time, and the list continues. But I love the flexibility of being able to gain new knowledge, learn new things, and interview exciting individuals. Today, I have a wonderful colleague of mine that I've known for just as long as I've had the opportunity to actually be on the airwaves. And I'm excited to pick his brain in areas of leadership, education, and community partnership. So without ado, I am going to allow my colleague to introduce himself to learn a little more about him.
My name is Dr. Marvin Perry. I am a leadership coach, and I've been in the leadership field for over 25 years. I am currently the director of the Morgan Community Mile, which is a community-based interaction between the university and the communities that surround the Morgan the Morgan campus. In addition to that, I am a coordinator for the Center of Urban Health and Equity, where I work with community leaders and community organizations, as well as working with the university in developing research that changes how we look at urban communities. And also, I have been a consultant in the field of urban research and community, as I've mentioned before, for over 25 years. So I have a passion for the community. I have a passion for leadership. My doctoral is in the education, urban leadership area, dealing with community colleges. So it's community college development leadership. And also am a city and regional planner under my master's program. So I've done various things as it relates to community, as it relates to education and research. And I know from your past, you have been passionate about communities for many years, and you have been a transformative agent for change in urban communities. So thank you again for allowing me to be on your show. I yield back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And what a phenomenal CV. You know, you have a wealth of knowledge, not just in higher education, but absolutely the community, not just the community, but really understanding the inner workings of the market, especially the urban market. And, you know, it's funny because most people don't recognize that there are only three markets to do business in: suburban, rural, and urban. And believe it or not, the world at least within the US, either live in the urban market, work in the urban market, shop in the urban market, or at least go through the urban market. But oftentimes they're not as familiar to identify what that market is. So, Dr. Perry, the first topic that I would like to go on with speaking on with you today is education. As you mentioned, you work in higher education. You have children who have gone through the education system. We've post COVID. And so my first question to you is, what is your thought on the state of education today? And what do I mean by the state of education? I'm meaning K-12 leading through the community college pathway and possibly through to the 4-year pathway, such as Morgan State University or any other university. So what is your perception and thoughts on the state of education as it is right now?
Well, thank you for that question, Dr. Dorsey. One of the things, which is my motto, is that every child has the ability, especially if there's any cognitive disabilities, have the opportunity to learn. And in my opinion, all students can triculate into some form of continuing education after high school. If it's not from a vocational standpoint where you go and get a trade, CDL, crafts, work craftsman, or nursing aid, or whatever that vocational occupation is, there is something for everyone. And so often I hear, Dr. Dorsey, folks say that education wasn't for my child or it wasn't for me after high school. And then after I interview them and ask them questions, I find that they went into some form of training. If it wasn't from work, if it wasn't a community college, but they did some form of training. And so to answer your question, how do I see career pathways? Because part of my dissertation was on STEM and the urban community and how impactful STEM is on providing a pathway from high school all the way to 4-year, all the way to the graduate school. And what I found that education as it relates to the African American or people or brown community is something that's achievable if there are processes put in place from high school, having the right counselors, the right courses, the right encouragement. One can start to develop a sense of who they want to be at the early ages of 6, 7, or 8 years old, just as you do with your lovely kids, giving them a sense of purpose, a guideline where they focus their attention on things that they're gifted in. And when a child is able to focus on his gift, then he is more amenable to continue his education, even though it may be a struggle. They want to do it because they don't look at it as a challenge. They look at something that they want to do. So I'm saying, Dr. Dorsey, that when you start at an early stage, developing a kid's mind, showing the children the opportunities that are out there in science, technology, engineering, and math, and some folks and some educators like to include arts and liberal arts, that we find that we give a kid an opportunity to develop his skills along the way. And so what I promote and when I'm working with folks coming out of high school is, first of all, understand what's out there for you and understand your gifts and try to hone in on those gifts that will enable you to continue your education. And so sometimes you can't master everything, but what you can master is what you're good at. And so if you're a good photographer, focus on that. And while you're focusing on what you're good at, let the educational piece integrate itself in what you are good at. And so from high school, I promote what you call early start, where folks start to, in the 10th and 11th grade, look at college as an alternative. It may not be the four-year college. It can be the community college, or it could be a vocational educational program, and start to develop your sense of awareness in those programs, and then enroll yourself into those programs. And as you start to do the coursework, as you start to get good at it, as you start to see your way matriculate to better and higher things to accomplish, you start to go up a career path that may include a 2-year community college, get your certificate. 2-year. After that, you may go for a 2-year community college degree. And then from there, when you know you're ready, you may do a career path in 4-year colleges. Many 4-year colleges, especially your HBCUs, have memorandum of understanding with your community colleges where they will prepare kids, or I say the young folks that you often work with, Dr. Dorsey. They will prepare them to come into the 4-year colleges by taking some of the coursework and courses that they have mastered or passed or got certified in, and bring some of those courses into the 4-year college, where it's much easier to continue your education. So I say, Dr. Dorsey, every kid has that ability to go beyond high school. And more importantly, kids in high school now, because the world has changed during COVID. Everything is online, even though we physically still go back to class now, but there's so many online programs that can prepare kids as early as the 9th grade for vocational training or community college courses. If I could do it all over again, Dr. Dorsey, I would start as early as you started your kids in the 8th or 9th grade, looking for opportunities that will take them beyond high school and college. Thank you, Dr. Dorsey. You're back.
You're welcome. And you a lot of great content, a lot of information, but the one thing that I want to draw on what you mentioned is every student has the ability to go beyond the 4 walls of what they see. It kind of reminds me of blind faith, right? When it says you have to have a faith of a mustard seed, and that faith is not what you see. It's just believing by putting one foot in front of the other. So absolutely, every student has the ability to go beyond their parents' level of education, what they haven't even dreamt of just yet, and just know that the sky is the limit. And then just one additional correction. Actually, I started my kids in elementary school. So you're right. But you mentioned the word gifts. I'll use the word skill set, right? Because as we know, even to once a person, whether they graduate from a vocational program or 4-year, they're developing passion, gifts, skill set. And the skill set, the passion, the gifts is, even if there are no money involved, it's what's getting them up in the morning and keeping them excited and allowing them to say, hey, I may not have $1 million in the bank, but I at least know how to go out and do something. And that is absolutely important. I did want to do a follow-up question with you regarding the transition and what we know and call as dual enrollment. As you know, Dr. Perry, a lot of districts, whether it's one district versus the other or statewide initiative, there are a lot of high schools or a lot of districts partnering with the community college. And that's known as a dual enrollment or an ECAP registration. And what dual enrollment is, for those that are watching and listening and may not be as familiar with, is the opportunity for students to actually take advantage of college courses while still in high school. And those approved courses that are a part of an approved list, a student can actually take a college course and it counts towards their graduation requirement while in high school. So for example, College 101 is equivalent to English 11 in high school. So if a student decided to take that course in college and pass it, they would end up earning a high school credit while also earning a college credit. It sounds exciting, but it is a monkey wrench thrown in here. And this is where I would love my wonderful guest, Dr. Marvin Perry, president or executive director of the Morgan Community Mile, extensive background in urban and community planning, and also has his doctoral degree as it relates to STEM in the urban market. So, Dr. Perry, as you mentioned, my three youth, so I have 4 children, but 3 of my children are high schoolers currently, and they are in college. Yes. I have an 8th grader. Oh, I have a 14-year-old that just started 9th grade, but actually started his associate's degree prior to going into 9th grade. I have a senior, at least I have 2 seniors, but my youngest daughter went from a sophomore to a senior, and she started her college classes this fall, and she's still in. And then I have a senior, she has an extra semester in school, and so she's doing high school and college at the same time. But along the way, Dr. Perry, while my personal students, took access to this dual enrollment, we ran into what I identify as a tri-strangulation model. And the tri-strangulation is the lack of correlation between the school system, the community college, and a third entity, and would love to get your insight on it. So let me explain. So in my students' district, they align, which is the state of Maryland, the school system aligns their course curriculum with the University of Maryland system. And what that means to the broader audience is most students do not come out of high school prepared for college. So back in 2014, 2015, the smart individuals from the University of Maryland system and our school system sat down to develop this pathway, which is part of the Maryland Blueprint. And what that does is that it now requires students that are in high school, that started high school last year, to now take a high school math every year they're in high school. Not earning credit, but at least being enrolled. So if a student is, and they still need 4 years of four years of math credit to graduate. So if a student is coming out of middle school with middle school credit in math, they still have to take 4 years of high school math. They don't have to pass it, but they have to at least be enrolled. Of those 4 years, and then the 2 credits earned in middle school, they would need to earn 2 more credits. Sounds simple, sounds easy, could be an overkill, but that's a different topic. So that's alignment with the University of Maryland system. However, our school district also has this partnership, quote unquote, dual enrollment with our local community college. As most may know or may not know, the community college curriculum is not aligned with their local school district. The community college has their pathway. The 4-year colleges have their pathway. The districts have their pathway. And I mean districts, I mean school districts. So for those that may not know, there are 3 ways to matriculate into a community college. One, you can have SAT scores if you are a high schooler. You can do an AP course, but have to at least earn a 3. Or if you don't have SAT scores or scored a 3 on an AP, which is college credit, then you have to take what's called an entrance level exam. And that's standard even for 4-year. So in our county, the students, regardless of what their pathway is in high school, so the students take the entrance level exam, and in this case, for this community college, it's called the ALEX placement test. The students take it in math and reading, but mainly math, because math is the basis that help students matriculate. In the based on how the students score, they might end up in remedial math. You with me, Dr. Perry? So remedial math, unfortunately, does not earn credit on a college level. But the information that was shared is that those remedial courses would count towards high school math. Now, when those individuals sat down to put this together, the long and short of it, they didn't think about these scenarios. So, Dr. Perry, my question to you is, those students taking advantage of dual credit enrollment, because we just talked about that every young mind has aspirations to move up in college. Unfortunately, with these remedial courses, there is no win-win for the student, meaning they go through the course from a community college standpoint, they pass it, they at least move up the rank from the community college standpoint, but they get no reward on the high school level. So they take the course, they meet the requirement, great, doesn't show up on their transcript. Unfortunately, when they go back to the high school, it doesn't show up on a transcript there. What are your thoughts on how this could either elevate the student or have them burn out and crash, and think long term that this could be a waste of time in terms of dual enrollment? Why not just stay in high school and matriculate once I get done?
Thank you. That was a great overview, Dr. Dorsey. I like to go to your strangulation, I think is how you pronounce that. And yes, in Black communities, Black and brown communities, we find a lot of that. I want to go back to a couple things that you said, especially when you talk about remedial courses. Remedial courses has always been a challenge for teachers, professors, and the students. We have never really mastered that. If you think about that, the remedial courses go back to the beginning of time when we developed a lot of our community colleges. Our community colleges were developed back in the early 1930s for the sole purpose of training folks who didn't feel that college wasn't for them. And in many cases, community colleges were programs that took on a lot of the remedial courses. And so as we look at it at today and how remedial courses have impacted many of our students, we find that a lot of students drop out of high school when they get closer to the 12th grade, or even when they if they do stay in school and go to college, they drop out because of these remedial courses. I think whenever you are making a child feel that he has to take something that is less than what the normal child or his peers are engaged in, that has a negative impact on that person who's taking those remedial courses. It makes them feel less than, or it makes them wonder why I'm not taking regular courses. So I really have never been excited about how we use remedial courses to help kids to catch up. I think that anytime we want to challenge an individual, we need to make them perform at a level that is conducive to the folks that they're going to be competing against. So when you have young, bright minds coming out of junior high school, going into high school, and we're saying to them, well, you aren't at the grade level that you should be. My thing is challenge them at that grade level. The best way to make a student smarter and better is to make him take the traditional course that everyone else has to take and push him to the next level. I think it's an injustice when we bring out programs that allow kids to perform on coursework that is not at the same level of those who are going into college. So what we find that once we start to do as you talk about, the exams, the SATs and the exams into college, that we are not prepared because the courses that we were taking, those children were taking, were not of a higher level of participation in their cognitive thinking. So it's important for us to look at courses like remedial math, remedial writing, in those courses, and see how we can integrate them better in the regular coursework and not have our students take 1 to 2, sometimes even 3 years of remedial courses that really just holds them back from what their gifts and desires are. And so as we look at coming into college now, we often say to folks that do your best in taking your SAT and ACT exams, but more importantly, what you should do is build up a body of work. And the body of work coming out of high school should mean that you should be in organizations, you should be in outside curriculum programs, and you should develop your resume of work where it's not about me looking at your test taking abilities, but me looking at how much you can take on either as a class load or as an educational experience. So thank you. And I'd like to go back to you, Dr. Dorsey.
Yes, and thank you so very much for that, Dr. Perry. And it's one, you're absolutely, and we can stay on education for a really long time, but I do have one additional follow-up that I do want to get your insight on. And there are a lot of, and for those that are watching, we absolutely want you to go back and dissect the conversation from the first two inquiries, because it's yielding a lot of positive attributes that would plant the seed and help you grow in situations where you are. But, Dr. Perry, we know in mainstream education, there are 3 levels of individuals, even before, I can't even say even before getting to college, because even in college, even having to work as a doctor, as a consultant, helping doctoral holders become doctoral candidates becoming doctoral holders, I still found the same level of individuals as I did when I worked in the K-12. And those 3 levels of individuals are people that are high achieving, Dr. Perry, that are already with a great solid background in the upper trajectory of their courses in terms of knowledge, acquisition, application, grades, the whole 9. Then we have individuals that fall directly in the middle, Dr. Perry, as you would know, and they could tip one way or the other on the scale. And then we have our low achieving individuals, not saying that they can't intellectually elevate or be stimulated to do better, but they're just following that low grade pathway. And I want to park there for a second. And parking there, and we're talking about this dual enrollment. We're going back to what you mentioned, developing the resume, the body of work. And, we're talking about this dual enrollment and in a mindset, and not just mindset, but action, that all students have the ability to really go on to the next level. But for those individuals, Dr. Perry, who may not academically have the body of work, will not necessarily take the SAT or ACT, because the state of education right now is in influx. We have more substitute teachers than we have certified teachers in the classroom, and this is even before college. So my question to you, Dr. Perry, is how does those individuals that are considered low level or even average, who may not have had a solid as solid a foundation from elementary to middle school, who may not know their gifts and their talent, may not have access to external organizations or community-based organizations that will allow them to close the gaps, how how do we begin to prepare those students? And believe it or not, Dr. Perry, it's at least about 80% of our youth today, right, that are living and not even excelling below the grade level. How do we prepare those youth to be inspired and motivated to say, I'm not performing right now. I have aspirations to go to college, 4-year, 2-year trade tech or vocational, but I'm stuck. Any suggestions or ideas to share?
So, Dr. Dorsey, that was an excellent recap of where we are in today's society. And more importantly, you are correct that there are 3 levels, and there have been 3 levels since time, since the educational system has allowed us to participate in it. You have those who achieve. Often they achieve based on the environment that they come from, right? Their parents or the grandparents or whoever is influential in their life gives them towards educational excellence and puts them in schools or programs that enhances their cognitive ability to master science, technology, engineering, math, and other courses like art and writing at an early stage. And so those kids go into an advanced pool. And that advanced pool, as you indicated, is a very small number as it relates to people of brown skin color. But at the same time, if those individuals can make it of high standard of performance, then others can do it as well. And so when we look at the middle tier, those who could tip left, tip right, go below, go up, we look at those as individual students who continuously need guidance and continuously need the support of the educational system to continue on. And sometimes it's the middle level that also gets lost because they're good enough to make it through the 12th grade. They perform at a level that they can make it in the community college, but often they fall short when they get into 4-year college and their math and English or science skills are not above where it should be in order for them to sustain a type of grade level that they feel acceptable for them and as far as the school feels they should be at. And then we have the lower tier. And when we look at the lower tier, we often look at that lower tier as kids who often have parents that have not moved on or trickled to college. So they often could be from families that are one family, one parent situation where those kids have to depend on mom who has to work, who has to, do all the things that she has to do to survive and then tend to the kids and their schoolwork. And there's limited time for her to be able to really fully engage herself in what her child or children are trying to learn. So to me, that's when it comes to the school system, Dr. Dorsey, where we have to take an unconventional approach in how we deal with students from low income areas who, the first thing they're thinking about in the morning is, I haven't had breakfast. I haven't had, a nutritional meal, but I'm coming to school and you want me to start performing at this certain level of expectation. And I barely got a good night's sleep the night coming to school. So we have to take an unconventional approach. I call it almost like a cares approach, right? We have to care about the community, right? We have to care about the art in how we approach these kids. We have to reserve ourselves to be more intentional in how we teach them. And more importantly, we have to put education first and any other services that are needed in that day-to-day operation. So we need to approach kids who come out of these communities differently. We need to love these kids. Just to tell you a little story, my mother taught in a urban area in Washington, D.C., where many kids' parents were on some public assistance. But when those kids, kindergarten, first grade students came in her classroom, she treated them no differently than she would treat any kid. She hugged them, she kissed on them. You know, you can't do that now, but she hugged on those students. She built their self-esteem, and she had them doing things that students were doing in the third grade. She started them reading in kindergarten, reading a lot in the first grade, doing math problems. And so to answer your question, Dr. Dorsey, I think that we need to take a different approach as we deal with kids who are in urban areas, seeing a lot of the violence that are taking place in some of these urban areas. We need to know when these students come into our classroom, it's our job not only to protect them, but to build their self-esteem, to let them know that they're loved, and to encourage them to go way beyond what they can imagine. Because in some of those communities, they don't even imagine going to 12th grade or going to college or even being around for that long based on what they've seen with their cousins, brothers, or parents. They end up thinking negative thoughts like death or jail, or they can't do it. So we need to take a more unconventional approach in dealing with these kids by looking at what works in low-income communities. I yield back to you.
Yes, and that was absolutely passion that I'm hearing from you. And it is a phenomenal segue into our next topic. I'm excited to always learn and to hear from individuals that are a part of the show and that have an insight far greater than I do. And so, as a leader and as a person that is always learning to hear from others and to learn from new individuals, I absolutely thank my guest today. And we look forward to seeing you on the next show. If you have any comments, do reach out to us as you have the opportunity to do so. And we look forward to seeing you on the next broadcast. So until then, have a great and wonderful day. And remember that all things are possible as long as you believe and have faith of a mustard seed. Peace out.